Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyle Gold and Cam Hirosaki. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Hi, welcome to episode number 12 of Unsheathed. I am Kyle Gold.
And I am Cam Hirosaki, Jedi Knight and friend to Captain Solo.
and it is just the two of us tonight. We are recording again from our discreet, undisclosed location. Looking forward to answering some of your questions, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're up to and where we've been and where we're going.
And I will also point out here that I've upgraded from wine to scotch this evening.
I've sadly downgraded from Coke Zero to water.
So the balance remains,
yes.
Or we've at least reversed the balance in the same direction.
Between the two of us, we've got a scotch and water.
There you go. Yeah, this is just straight. It's a 16-year Speyside. It's very nice.
Is it straight or neat?
Because
it's much gayer if it's neat.
Well, it's certainly much gayer if it's not straight.
Yes.
QED.
I think you need to drink a little bit more of that.
I've only had like 2 sips so far.
So we have a couple ideas for things we're going to do on the podcast coming up, and we'll talk about it again a little bit at the end. We're going to do one episode talking about the life of writers. We had a couple questions for Kit, and I think we need another week to coax him out from behind the mixing board. So hopefully,
He's easily startled.
Maybe another little bottle of scotch or some wine will help with that. But we'll get him on the show sometime in the next couple weeks, and we'll talk a little bit about how our lives are different because we're writers, which mostly you'd probably be able to guess, but I think we'll have a couple surprises in there for you.
Actually, I think after being on a few panels, I think that there's a lot that you and I take for granted that a lot of people don't seem to know. So I think that might actually be an interesting conversation for a lot of people.
Well, I sure hope so. At the very least, it'll keep people listening. And with Halloween coming up, we figured we might spend an episode talking about writing horror stories. We both dabbled in that, although it's neither of our specialities.
And just to, stress, that's horror stories, not horrible stories. Although I'm sure that we've both done that as well.
And not horror stories either. Which we both know what we're thinking there. So
yeah.
We'll just move right along. So that's
what I'm thinking.
That's what's coming up in the future. And I think before we get to the questions, we're both at kind of a point where we've got a lot of projects going on, a lot of balls in the air, so to speak. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about what we're up to these days. I'll let you go first.
I'll
Mr.
start.
Otto-san.
Yes. Mine will probably be shorter than yours. So the one thing that I just...
Size doesn't matter.
Thank you, I think. So I've got 3 things that are in my court right now. One is a short story that I've mentioned on my live journal a couple of times that I've been working on. I finally finished up a first draft of that, and I kind of hate it. I think that after writing the story, I think I'm looking back on it and going, yeah, there really wasn't much of a story there to tell, and I may just put that in a digital desk drawer and never let it see the light of day. I might actually have to send it to you to look at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a good lesson, too, because, I think people are sort of bound and determined that if you've taken the time to write out a story, even if you don't like it and you don't think it's working, by God, you've got to get it out there and show it to people. And, honestly, you can write another one.
Yeah. I'm not too disappointed. It didn't take me that long to write. I got about halfway through it and then thought, I don't think that this idea really holds as much weight as I originally thought it did. But I was like, it'll only take a couple more days to at least finish a first draft. And so I might as well at least try.
Yeah.
Rather than, because if I didn't, it was going to nag me forever whether or not it was a good idea or not.
I have a bunch of half-finished stories sitting around that I just never got the right handle on. And
yeah, I have one I started actually back at, I want to say MFF 07, which I actually think was a good idea, but I just got overwhelmed with life and work and stuff and never got back to it. I should dig that one up, actually.
Yeah. Whenever they strike your fancy, go back to them.
The other one is the secret project that I've mentioned. Actually, I haven't mentioned it in a while on here.
No, it's been a little while.
But I've got about another month or so of annoying personal projects to get through first before I can really start getting back with that. But I hope to at least begin work on that sometime before MFF. So if anyone sees me at MFF and asks me, hey, have you started work on that project that you keep alluding to and I haven't, you can smack me or something. Or
Just call it the Secret Otter Project.
the secret otter. That sounds like it should like build into something like either like an episode of a show or like a Lemony Snicket novel.
If it was a secret beaver project, it could build into a dam.
Yeah.
But otters don't build dams or lodges.
No, we just sort of swim around on our backs and do cute human things with our hands.
Yes. Which is adorable, let me say.
Yeah, aw.
He thinks he's people.
Why is he writing such sad things? And the third one is the story which I need to write for you that I was challenged to write back at Rainforest.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've been doing mental brainstorming for, but I haven't yet had the time to put pause to keys and get anything down. I was going to actually start doing it today, but another thing came up and I had to do that instead. So
Yeah, I don't know if I should send you the one I wrote about you yet until
you can use it as bait and or blackmail.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how much you want to see before you write yours. I've finished a draft of it, and I'm running it by Kit, and he's had some suggestions about it, and he actually thinks I should show it to a lot of other people before I show it to you. So, but I'm not sure that's quite.
That's kind of terrifying. I'm just going to come out and say that. That kind of scares me.
Well, Kit and I are in it as well. So,
well, you're certainly in the story I'm going to be writing about you, so that evens that end out.
No, I think it's fun. I'm quite pleased with how it came out, and I think it'll be very enjoyable for you, and hopefully we'll get to show it to some other people as well. But you'll see it first.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
So that was that segues into my projects, because I think that was the last of yours. That one's kind of on my plate in the editing mode. Kit and I have been talking about it and going back and forth on what I'm trying to accomplish with it and how effective it is. I think he's been very helpful in sort of interpreting my kind of vague and hand-wavy goals about I want this story to be an important milestone and really comment on the otter condition. But and he manages to turn that into then in that case you need to not have so much description of not otters in it or something. So that's been good, and I'm
okay with not otters.
Well, there are knotted otters in it.
Okay. Ooh. So it's already different from the first story you wrote for me.
There are no barbed otters in this one.
Yeah.
I don't know if snow leopards have barbs, actually. I don't know if that's just tigers.
I've never seen a naked
lions.
snow leopard in person, so... No, actually, that's not true. I have. Well, I mean, I've seen snow leopards in person. They're, by definition,
they are
always naked.
You've never seen an unsheathed snow leopard in person.
That's true. I have not. They were just wandering around in a cage.
Right. Not displaying their barbs or lack thereof.
They're very pretty animals, though.
They are. So there's that one, and the editing process has been kind of fun on that. I had a lot of fun writing it, and I hope you enjoy it.
I hope I enjoy it too.
You've already seen part of it, and I think you responded with, "Oh, you son of a bitch." So,
it sounds like something I would say.
I'm going to leave it at that. What else am I writing?
Now I remember the scene you're talking about, the little snippet you showed me, and yeah, you are a son of a bitch. The scotch is delicious.
Oh, boy. Now our listeners are going to have to guess which part of the story, when they finally read it, caused you to call me a son of a bitch.
I don't think they'll guess.
I don't think so either, but it is worth pointing out that female foxes are vixens and not bitches, so technically I'm a son of a vixen. But
That doesn't quite scan with Son of a Preacher Man, so I can't make a
No.
fun song.
No. Well, you could, but it would just have to be a different one. You can think about that. I'm also working, of course, on the sequel to Out of Position, which I've mentioned a couple times. People may be somewhat surprised to know that although there is sheath in it, I'm sort of 30,000 words in before I got to an actual sex scene, which is quite different from the first book, in which there seemed to be you couldn't go 2 pages without tripping over a sex scene. So
That's like reading 6 Yiff Star stories without running into a sex scene.
I know, and nobody likes the no Yiff stories, do they?
I don't even know why they have that as a category.
I mean, it's Yiff Star.
Exactly.
Wouldn't the no Yiff stories be like it's on another site? But never fear. I have a feeling a lot of those 30,000 words will get cut out because a lot of it just kind of rambles, and I need to tighten it up and add tension and blah 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 blah. So
Hurry up and fuck.
hurry up and get it on. But that's going along real well. I'm real pleased with how that's running. I'm working on a story for a project that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about. And also, but I'm very happy with that one. I've just had sort of a bunch of little epiphanies about it this weekend where it all kind of came together, and I thought I had the story arc for it kind of in my head with the character and all, and I thought I need an appropriate metaphor for this character's state of mind, and it suddenly sort of came into being almost organically, which was nice, so to speak.
Like a virus.
Yes. And the other one I'm writing is just a story that I had an idea for, based on a letter that a fan sent me. Well, I'm not sure I could actually call him a fan. He was expressing his concern over a particular problem in the fandom, and that he experienced in the fandom. And that's all I'll say about that one, because it just made me want to write a story about it.
Don't give your fans the inkling that if they send you emails, they can inspire you to write stories, or you will get a barrage.
I already get a barrage, and this is the first one so far that's inspired me to write. So don't send me emails whining about your problems and expect that there will be a story out of it. I'll listen. I'll respond. But
send your emails with your whiny problems to Notcast.
Yeah. They like it. That's what they do. No, I do respond to emails, Kyle@kylegold.com, if you can't find my website in the contact page. But this was just something interesting that I hadn't thought about, and it made me kind of curious as to how certain situations would play out, and that's where that came from. And what else am I working on? I'll look at what else is.
There's still more? Oh my god.
Well, I have 6 documents open right now.
How do you do that?
Oh, the other one is Shadow of the Father, which is just.
Oh yeah, that.
I'm just just that other novel that I wrote, which I'm just doing final edits on. Everybody seems to think it's pretty close, and so this month it'll be laid out and off to the publisher. Sarah's doing some illustrations for it, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. And that's where we are with our projects, I think. Do we have anything else going on?
No, not really. But I do think it's worth pointing out that once again, I have the trap of, I'm going to write myself a short, fun, sexy story. And it either becomes a long, drawn-out, not-so-sexy story, or it just sort of fails and fizzles and doesn't become a story at all.
You just need a quickie to get back in the game.
Oh, that's true on so many levels. You have no idea. Well, you have some idea now.
Yes. One more thing where I'm actually thinking that I might be able to show up at MFF. That's Midwest Fur Fest in November. And we would love to do a live episode of the podcast there. So
that'd be great. I had a great time doing the one at Rainforest.
Oh yeah, we had a ton of fun. So we're going to be in contact with the con staff. We've kind of approached them about doing panels, but not the podcast specifically, and They're probably kind of busy and haven't written back. So if any of y'all out there listening know someone on con staff,
Nag them on our behalf.
Nag them on our behalf, and we'll drop them another letter. And, if we don't get their permission to do it, we've got a pretty portable setup. Maybe we'll just sit out in the lobby and do a guerrilla podcast.
It'll be like wheeling pirate radio.
Yeah. We'll take over one of the little panel rooms, and
and
we'll tell you on Twitter where to go. And
secret sheathy podcast in the Delaware room or whatever.
We'll do it outside, and it'll be freezing to death.
There's no being unsheathed in the evening air in Wheeling, Illinois.
No, there's not. Well, I don't know. I think that's about all I have. Anything else you want to do before we dive into questions?
I think we are updated. I think we can move on to the...
All right. Everyone's up to date.
Yep.
You want to go first? Or you want me to?
I can take mine.
Go for it.
So I have an email here from Mythic Fox. He writes, "Is it ever appropriate to take a story down off of your webpage or wherever in order to rewrite part of it and repost it? If so, when? And is the decision affected by the number of people who have read the original version?" Oh. I've been working on a story series for a while, but a major hiatus between chapters has resulted from some time problems and some issues regarding part of the plot and subject matter. I'm planning on picking it back up as soon as I have time. However, upcoming chapters are going to see a shift in the story's tone and mood for several reasons, including the aforementioned issues and the fact that I realized too late that the tone of the early chapters can't comfortably sustain the entire story. I've seriously considered going back and tweaking the early chapters to make the transition smoother thematically, but I'm really torn on the issue. Any advice you two can offer would be greatly appreciated. Your humble fan, Mythic Fox.
I think you're far better suited to answer this question than I am.
Yes, so this is actually kind of a pointed question for me. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but this is something I've actually done, where I wrote a big, long, sequential story series that I got partway through, left it on hiatus, and then took it down for a number of reasons, personal, professional, and also quality, to be honest. Where it was very similar, where he says here that
Which I still argue with you, because I still like many of those stories. But
I won't get into an argument about whether the stories themselves have merit, but just sort of matching what he says here about he realized afterwards that the tone and the theme had changed, and it's sort of the thing where if I had known earlier on what I knew then, would I have done it differently? And the answer in this question, in this case, my answer was yes. This is not what I want the story to be. It's not that what I wrote before was bad, but it's not where the story on the whole is going. And so, ergo, yes, people have read this, but it's sort of like it's not quite a catch-22 because, okay, people have read it, people have enjoyed it, but you're still the writer. You still have the chance to make it better. And yeah, I'll tell you from personal experience, you're going to get flack for doing this sort of thing where I took it down and said, hey, well, actually, I didn't say anything. I sort of did it.
It was just gone one day.
I did it surreptitiously, and people came to me and they said, hey, we noticed that this is gone. And I said, my fans, I have done this for your own good. And they came back with, no, give us Barabbas. And, the back and forth there. It's going to go over everyone's head, isn't it?
It went right over mine, I'll tell you that.
You can Wikipedia afterwards. So, sorry.
Well, I'll just toss it in here while you're recovering from laughing at your own joke. That
I'm laughing at your reaction to it.
It's one of the perils, and we've both done this, where you start writing a story series and you're putting it up one piece at a time. I've done it twice now, and you may get to the end of it and think, wow, I really wanted to do something different with that. Mm-hmm. In my case, both of mine were sort of little experimental side projects anyway. The first one was Helfer's Busy Day, which I just wanted to see what would happen if I let other people direct the story, and it turned out not so bad.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
And the other one is Yolande's Journal, which is still not done. It's about halfway through, which is more an exercise for myself to see if I could fill in kind of 2 years of backstory leading up to the novel. And as it turned out, I had to make up a whole bunch of plot and stuff beyond what I had originally intended to put in there.
Oh God, there's story here, and I have to write it.
I know. I'll tell you, this is kind of weird. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. That has nothing to do with the question, but I had a dream the other night that was one of those weird dreams where, in the dream, I was in some kind of world where rules didn't make sense, even within the context of the dream.
That's so meta.
I know. And within the dream, I woke up from the dream. It was one of those things where I was like trapped in a dream and people were trying to get me to break out of it. And then as soon as I broke out of it, I kind of had a flash where I saw what was the real world within the dream, and then I woke up for real. But I just had this thought that, wow, what if my subconscious is trying to tell me that this world that I'm in now is just a dream and is trying to get me to wake up from it? And I thought, well, that would kind of suck because I don't want to have to write all my novels over again. I mean, I already know how they go. I don't want to have to spend all those years typing them out again. It's a lot of work.
See, I mean,
so
the worst I've had is
I'll stay asleep for the moment.
I just wake up and think, oh man, now I don't actually have a bike that'll take me to the moon.
I don't actually have a orange and white tail to wag.
I was actually having a conversation with somebody earlier today about dreams and how disappointed I am that I don't have furry dreams. I wish I did. It'd be kind of awesome.
I've had a couple furry dreams, but they're never as good or as interesting as you kind of want them to be.
Yeah, because I was talking about how I don't have furry dreams and I don't have sexual dreams, which surprised everyone I told that to.
Oh, yeah, I don't really so much either.
I can probably count like on one paw the number of sex dreams I can distinctly remember having in my life, and at least half of those, while they were sexual dreams, they certainly weren't sexy.
Yeah.
One of them involved having awkward sex with my ex-boyfriend, which just no.
Who was your ex-boyfriend at the time?
At the time, he was my ex at the time. Yes.
Okay, all right.
If I was having awkward sex about my at the time boyfriend, that would be very telling.
Yeah.
But,
and soon to be your ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get these weird kind of recursive dreams. The other dream that I had where I was waking up from a dream within the dream was also kind of this recursive time loop thing where I was trapped in this world where sequential time wasn't really working right, and I kept seeing other people.
So you dreamt you were in a Tarantino film?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. The dialogue wasn't that clever. But anyway.
So yeah, back to the question.
Back to the question.
And
sort of.
Wow, we just
kind of went off on
we have arrived in Podcast Central for having tangented like that.
10 minutes of rambling.
Oh, it wasn't that long. But actually, I think one of the telling things about what he's saying here about his story series is he says, I'm writing stories, and then he starts to refer to them as chapters.
Right.
Which, if you think of it as if you're writing a large piece which is broken into chapters, if it's something that's going to be released as a whole, like a novel, you're going to write all your chapters out, and then you're going to go back and you're going to revise the whole thing, and the earliest chapters are probably going to get the heavier revisions.
That's always the case with mine.
Yeah, and so, I mean, from a logical standpoint, if you haven't finished writing it yet, you're not going to know what's going to need changing or not. So if you're posting things as you go, and then you realize, okay, this story has a different direction than I wanted, or, it's supporting a different tone that I originally wanted, then I absolutely think it's legitimate to revise things, take them down, bring them back, put them back up when you're ready. And people, he asked, does this matter how many people have read it? I don't think it does. The people who read it will have read it, and they can remember that fondly or not. And then, when you put it back up, you can just be like, hey, you know what? I think this is better now. And as long as you don't make Greedo shoot first, you should be fine.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't have as much experience with this, but I'll agree with that. That, basically it's your story.
Yeah.
And do what you want with it. And if you need to pull it down to make it part of a bigger work that's going to more reflect your vision, do it. You always want to keep your fans happy.
Mm-hmm.
If you had several hundred people who'd read the story and loved it the way it was, then you might consider just leaving it up, but saying, all right, I'm going to, this is kind of an old version of the story, and I'm working on a novel. I'm leaving this up, but I'm going to forget this exists. I'm leaving it up for y'all, but I'm going to take it and put it back in into this other form that I'm creating. Because, honestly, you could have stuff online and just not even care that it's there. And just put a note on the story that says, this is old, I'm working on a revision, read it, enjoy it if you like, but it's turning into something better.
Yeah. I mean, my oldest stories are all one-offs anyway, and while I don't think they're up to my current standards, they're not so embarrassing that I want to take them down. But at the same time, I know I'm not going to go back and rewrite them because, okay, I wrote the story, it's done, that's what it is.
Right.
But in this case, if you have a larger work, that's a different story.
And that's one of the things that you have to deal with as a writer is just say, there's always a temptation to go back and fix the stories, and at some point you just have to say, it's done, it's out there, it's finished.
Yeah, and it's better to be able to say, my older stuff isn't as good, than it is to say, my newer stuff isn't as good.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to try to tackle one more question, although this one we could probably do a whole episode on, and maybe we should sometime in the future. But this one comes to us from Atari Otter, who is quite friendly. We had a great time hanging out with him at Rainforest.
Yeah, he's a cool guy, and he's a very good writer.
He is. He won the short story competition at Rainforest,
He
and
did.
his story will be in the con book next year.
Yeah, and I saw him at a lot of the writing panels over the weekend.
Yep. He was
very dedicated, very devoted.
He is. He's very dedicated. Probably one of the more dedicated writers in the fandom I've run across. So he writes,
I raise my glass to you.
Cheers.
Fellow writer Otter.
He writes, Hello again, K.M. Hirosaki and Kyle Gold.
Hello.
I had another question that came to mind as I was dabbling in some unfamiliar territory and was hoping you might have some advice on it. I've been putting the guidelines down and getting some ideas written out for a world that I'm making up on my own. What advice do either of you two have on the subject of creating your own worlds and making them work?
Kill the feline. Sorry.
Always kill the cat.
Yes.
Most of my worlds have been built kind of organically.
Yeah.
I started with a sort of a feel.
Yeah.
When I wrote Prisoner's Release, it was more of a medieval world. It kind of shifted towards a Renaissance world because that's more interesting to write about for the stories that I was doing. And so I just had in mind, this is the tone of the world. This is, what I want. So when I say Renaissance era, I'm saying largely agrarian, feudal society with nobility because I wanted the structure of the lords, feudal lords holding land, the palace, the kings and succession and
relation between church
politics,
and state. Yeah.
church and state. And then going along with that is, you sort of discover the level of technology. You can adjust it a little bit. I have printed books in mind because it was fun to do that. And some kind of minor industrialization, but not really to any great extent.
Which, is fine for a late Renaissance era story, which yours seem to be.
Yeah. The Forrester universe is basically our contemporary world with a few names changed here and there, and a few concessions made to the different species in the world. Like, what would our world be like if it had to accommodate foxes and pronghorns and ermine and porcupines and possums and whatnot?
It'd be a sexier world, that's what.
Well, yeah, but I never really sat down to write out the rules of the world. I know some of the people that I talk to get really into the world building, where they want to write down, here's the major cities. I'm going to draw out these extended maps, and one of the things that I'd love to do with Shadow of the Father, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, is get a map of Argaea and print it in it. I have it. I have kind of sketchy relationships of where all the places are, but I want to get it in kind of like a Tolkien-like map, and I haven't been able to get that done. So, but I never went and sat down and wrote out the rules of the world and all that stuff. I just kind of started. The main thing is to keep a consistent feel.
Yeah, that was going to be my thing. I think the most important thing when it comes to world building is logical consistency. You can do what you want to serve the needs of the story or stories, so long as you keep to your own rules that you set out. Like you were saying, I tend to do very little setting planning in advance. I sort of let it happen. I would actually caution against too much advanced planning, or if you do advanced planning for yourself, I caution against putting too much of it into the story before it's ready, because you risk possibly limiting yourself later if something needs to change.
That's a good point, but at the same time, I know people that works for, and there's certainly, especially in fantasy and science fiction, there's certainly a lot more slack given to authors to create worlds.
That's true. But again, I still think, they do still have organic development of their own.
Right.
And, things change. Especially with a lot of the more well-known sort of mainstream science fiction, things like that, where it's a shared universe by virtue of you have people writing different books in a series, or, it's a TV show with different writers. And so, the universe and the canon of that universe is continually growing.
Now you're thinking about Star Trek.
Star Wars, anything like that. There are plenty. Not so. I can't think of any that are currently ongoing or that are hugely well known, but written work, series with sort of setting like that. I'm thinking more sort of classic 20th century sci-fi kind of things.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the main thing is to just, like you say, be logically consistent. There's really a finite number of types of worlds.
Yeah.
There's kind of the contemporary. There's sort of what Brer calls the high fantasy world with princesses and elves and magic and sword and sorcery. There's kind of a low fantasy where it's sort of more gritty Dungeons and Dragons kind of world. There's the various stages of historical world, but I think probably the medieval / Renaissance is one of the more common of those.
Then you've got the alternate history stuff, particularly steampunk is a big example of that.
Yeah. And my new world, Rustpunk, which once I get through with this crop of stories, maybe I'll write a Rustpunk story. Will be the first.
Steampunk is great because it allows for a preponderance of goggles and cross-dressing.
Yes. And we know how much foxes love goggles.
And cross-dressing.
And cross-dressing, yes. We've both got some experience with that. So just keep the...
That was such a strange statement.
And,
which I didn't realize until
I'm not quite sure what it means.
Yeah, I was like, wait.
Statement only applies to our fictional worlds.
Yes, fictional.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, just keep them simple, like you said. Don't overplan, because then people, you'll get caught up in details. Real brief recommendation: I use a program called WikiDPad, WIKIDPAD, which allows you to have kind of a private wiki on your computer. And those are great for storing all the information about your world. Whenever you add a new detail, just throw it in there, and then it's always accessible to you whenever you want to go back and check.
Yeah, and I'm sure I've mentioned this probably more than once on the podcast before, but don't front load your story with over-explaining the setting to the reader.
Right.
Because that's just boring.
Right.
It might be interesting as sort of like a, encyclopedic base of knowledge and whatnot, but when you're in the story itself, tell the story. Don't jump up and down screaming, "Look at this cool world I made."
Yep. Exactly.
I'm looking at you, Frank Herbert. Is it cool to diss a dead guy on a furry erotic writing podcast? Probably not.
I think it is cool.
Okay. For what it's worth, as much as the original Dune series had its flaws, the ones that were taken over after his passing were far worse. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think the less said about that, the better. So
since we haven't had a blowjob reference in this episode yet, I can just say that Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert can blow me. There we go.
nicely done.
Yeah.
Under the wire. Well, I was going to say in reference to our bumpers that we've already had our cake.
That's true, and
so
I apparently am owed either 2 blowjobs or 1 simultaneous blowjob. I don't know.
Which would be quite the trick.
They can sort that out.
Yeah. We'll give them a call.
Harmonica style? That's hot. Right, it broke Kyle.
Oh, jeez.
I wish y'all could see Kyle's face right now.
As red as a fox.
Funny how that works.
But yeah, so send in your letters, send in your questions about horror writing. I love
the rural
the rural horror genre.
The urban fare.
All right. Before we keep laughing at 30 Rock, we'll send in your questions. The email address is unsheathedpodcast@gmail.com. On Furfinity, we are Unsheathed. You can send private messages there, too, and we post about the episodes coming up. I believe we owe you guys a link from last week. And so send us your questions about horror writing. Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Stephen King,
yeah.
Dean Koontz, any of that ilk. And we will be back at you in another week with lucky episode 13. That's all I got.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something clever to say, and it's all all gone.
Funny how the scotch doesn't help with that.
I will let you know that scotch helped a great deal.
Well, it depends with what.
Now we've made Kit angry.
I'll leave you with the image of a tongue-tied otter. And with that, I am Kyle Gold.
Damn it. I'm Cam Hirosaki. Good night.